Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to talk about why your WOTC investment stopped working. This is something that I see a lot of the new people who came in 2020 that are still not understanding and still frustrated with, so we're really going to hit the final nail in the coffin with this one. You heard it here first. Wizards of the Coast, WOTC, WOTC stands for walked out the closet. That is exactly what happened in 2020 is you had people after the Logan Paul boom that went to their closet and walked out their old WOTC collections, sent them out to get graded, and then flipped them on eBay and became a business overnight. That is, in general, the biggest thing, biggest trend that occurred from 2020. A lot of people came out of the closet in 2020. They went and got their WOTC collection and started selling those cards. So when you look at that from a market condition perspective, when everything's going to the moon, right? Everyone's going to make money. It's real easy. But then, of course, that changed. The market conditions changed, and that's because of the fundamentals. If you actually looked at what was going on, if you pulled out the older rare mint or better grade and looked and said, okay, these WOTC cards are older, and then it doesn't really continue. They're not really rare because everyone had them, and they're not really mint either because the average bell curve on what people were getting from their cards they stored away were probably mid-range to maybe some low-end, high-range grade results. So that's what you were getting. That is the biggest general answer. So WOTC, walking out the closet is really what summarizes 2020. And there are a lot of ideas that I think people are still struggling with that were always true. And that's what's tough. Even for people who've been around for a while, one of the big ones was, well, steel product always goes up, right? And right now, that's not happening. In fact, a lot of the WOTC boxes are not going up. Some of them are actually going down, which we don't know what that means. It's like, how are these like reverse? Is that reverse up? Is that like a new angle of up? I've never seen that before with a WOTC box. Like, do I have to like tilt my head a certain way to see the stonks? So that's a new experience for a lot of people. For years on years on years, a lot of the WOTC boxes, even the most common WOTC boxes, were still increasing over time. And right now, that's just not happening. You have auction houses that are selling more boxes today than I would say at pretty much any point in time outside the 90s and 2000s. There is so much availability, and there's so many like little like data pools for that as well, which is really cool to see because back in the day it was more invisible. When you're a kid and you just have like your cat sitting money, that's your only exposure. Like if you go to Toys R Us and all that, that's all you see. So when you saw a booster box back then, you're like, wow, this one guy at Toys R Us might be the only guy in the world who has a booster box. Where now it's really cool to see events like that Leonhardt thing recently, where they went and like sourced all this base 2 rocket. They got a ton of product. And that day you probably saw more product open than again any time until probably like 99, 2000, somewhere in there. So point being is that you have a lot of public data now to look at and be like, oh, okay, like there's a lot more product out there than I previously assumed. Even me as a grandma basement dweller, like even now with my, my 15-year Fedora expert tier, I thought too that some of this product would slow down already. And after 2020, a lot of it was just hidden in someone's closet. That's really the answer. You see employees now that are selling their stuff. You see ex-employees and things like that that are really involved now in the forefront, where back in the day they were like a ghost, like you really didn't know anything about them. There's so many different things happening, so many different companies and industries now that are in the game, and that's why you have this uptick in supply. So a lot of people have to reassess, that WOTC box that I always bought, and all the big blue checkmark YouTubers would always tell me it only goes up. It's not going up anymore. So what's going on? And this is why the WOTC investments stopped working. That's one of the biggest ones. Because the longest time now is the safeguard is right. Boxes are only going to be open. There's going to be less of them. It's like, yeah, 20 years from now, sure. But right now, that's just not true. There are more open today. And now there's also somehow more available today. And I think what people forgot with that, if you go back to older rare mint or better, is that you got older down. But when you go to rare, it's like, do you think that the product that was released in a boom that was so large in the 90s, that sports sets weren't printed because all the printers were full Pokemon cards because there was so much demand that they couldn't meet it? Maybe some of those boxes might still be out there. And maybe those cards that have documentation that say, yeah, there's only about 100 of them, or maybe 1,000 at most, might be a safer bet for volatility. But I don't know. I feel like there might be someone who's been saying that for like over a decade now. And I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. The horse that I'm beating is like fossil fuel. Like I'm over here just mining like gasoline and oil at this point from beating that horse to death so hard. But here we go again. Here's another round of fundamentals over market conditions. When we look at things like the PSA backlog, I just did a video on that, and that's another great example of a market condition. Right now, the PSA backlog is starting to lessen, but that means there's just going to be more of it coming through. And I said this before, over a year ago. What do you think that's going to be? What do you think is going to be in that PSA backlog? What's going to make it up? Outside of the Zion rookies and things like that, with Pokemon, it's probably going to be a lot of the modern English, a lot of things that are accessible, a lot of the walked out the closet cards, a lot of the WOTC stuff is still coming through. You still have a lot of people from 2020 who are submitting stuff that came into the game. And there's nothing wrong with people coming in 2020. There's people coming and going all the time. That was a big entry point for a lot of people. But the reality is you still have a lot of people from that 2020 boom that are still submitting WOTC. And when you compound that with all these boxes being open, that event I mentioned earlier where people were opening more product than probably since, like 20 years ago, where's that going to go? That product is here. It's out there. It's in the hobby. Hashtag in the Pokemon community. It's there now. It's part of the game. So that's going to be what's probably going to come through in the next wave of the PSA backlog. And what's already in there is probably mostly that as well. Because at the end of the day, I think what people really missed, with a lot of that is, just like what I said with Toys R Us, you think it's just you. Like that kid who had the booster box that was like the king of the playground back then, or the Charizard, you're like, whoa, Charizard's so crazy, and you make all these assumptions out of emotion. And then we take a step back and you're like, okay, older rare mints are better. You're like, this is a product that was listed and posted on shelves, nationwide, worldwide, to meet this like unbelievable, like very unique explosion of interest that really didn't happen for, I don't really know anything else in my lifetime, at least, that happened like that. And it's like, yeah, there might be more of them. But, that was just something that I think a lot of people felt and they didn't really examine until they started to see the trajectory go, reverse stonk, to see the other way. Like they have to turn their head to see the gains. Another thing to talk about, a big one to talk about now because we have enough data for it. Non-PSA WOTC cards. I see you selected hard mode. If you're grading your stuff with non-PSA, I see you like to live and play the game on hard mode. And you want everything to be a pain because that's what it's going to be. It's been proven at this point. It's very obvious. I said from the beginning when all these new grading companies came in, what they are doing is definitely capitalizing on the backlog of PSA literally being closed at the time. And they have an opportunity there as a competitor to come in and take market share. And now that the dust is settled, we can objectively look and say, yeah, your value is not retained. You do not have the same value. It's very obvious PSA will give you the most value in the short term and the long term. So overall, the very, very safe general statement to make is that a non-PSA graded card has less liquidity and value, especially when you get into like the garage startup companies. I feel like every day I get an email from them. Hey, we just love your content. We just love what you do. And we just love if you'd like give us a shout out, give us a mention. We work with you for ads. I'm not exaggerating. Every week, every single week, I get that type of message, and it's always just like, sorry guys, like I'm not crossing that line, because this is what ends up happening. You have another company that just comes and goes. If you weren't around back in the 80s, 90s boom of sports, it was the same thing. Everyone trying to capitalize on the hype by just like trying to get as much market share as they can, and then when all the dust settles, you're left with the real ones, which for Pokemon, it is PSA. And as always, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. I'm completely free of all that stuff. This is just me trying to give you the most accurate observation as possible with my 15 plus years now of experience. And the obvious answer is obvious. PSA gives you the most value. So if you have non-PSA graded WOTC cards, it's just more weight downward. It's more reverse stonks for you, because not only did you walk it out the closet, but doing that impatient short-term option, is going to give you exactly that. Like you have to get rid of it fast. And people who did, they did probably pretty well. People just ripped it and flipped it. But now everybody's doing it. And the bottom line is nobody wants an 8.5 grade. An 8.5 grade is just the most unappealing thing you could possibly imagine. I don't want to see that. I remember when even just PSA, when I get an 8.5, I'm like, hey, can you just give me an 8? Like I just have an 8 and 8.5. So again, that's just playing it on hard mode. Sarcasm and dad jokes aside, like it is definitely more weight downward to have your cards not graded by PSA at this point when you're talking WOTC in particular, because you already have a downward trajectory right now because there's so much supply, and that's just more weight in that direction. And last but not least here, we're going to end, if you stuck around, you're going to get a little gold nugget that you can cash in for some max potions and ultra balls later at the Pokemon Center. What people really just wholesale don't understand, most people were trying to make money with mostly the same cards. That's really what it was. That's really the TLDR of this video, is that most people today who are like, why is my WOTC investments not working anymore? It's because most people were trying to make money with mostly the same cards. That's it right there. All these cards back here, every single one you see, I don't even know if they've gone down yet. All these Japanese promos back here. And the price fluctuation is so much more negligible. The long-term trend is like this. And I agree that a lot of these WOTC cards over time, like 10, 20 years, they should have some upward trajectory. But if I was holding a base unlimited 9 Zard right now, 8 or whatever, you feel like an NFT trader who held the bag at the end. You know, who invested in some digital land for a game that doesn't even exist yet, and surprisingly that all went to zero. You feel like that guy with some of those base unlimited prices at the peak of 2020, because again, market fundamentals versus market conditions. I think a lot of people got caught up in the market conditions, and there's a lot of innocence to that too. It's like, you know, kids at Toys R Us are on the playground that just get excited, you know, it's awesome, like, yeah, I'm really in it, it's so much fun, like, Charizard, that guy's got the Charizard, there's only maybe 10 of them, you know, because I only know like 2 people with them. That's what was going on. You had most people were just trying to make money with those same things because that's all they knew. And in reality, a lot of the people, a lot of the experts, anyone who's seasoned and who understands the fundamentals, for me, I've always been someone who I just don't like volatility that much. I'm not as concerned with what card will stonk when. I'm more concerned with the thing I'm buying. I want to retain value long term. Even if that doesn't make me a lot of money, I just don't like seeing it go like this. Like I don't want any of that. I don't need any of that stuff. Like, so that's why, you know, these cards in the background are great examples of that. Like Rocket 20th, Art Academy, Mario Pikachu, Scream Pikachu. You know, even the current, I would say, examples I talk about all the time, Patreon, even the cheap ones like Nagaba Pikachu, it's already up. It's already up. Like Nagaba Pikachu is already more expensive than when it came out. And that's a very affordable card still. You know, it came out like $10 or something, like free if you ordered something from Pokemon Center. We're talking free. Like we're talking the absolute cheapest possible thing for even me when I was at Toys R Us as a kid. You know, everybody could afford it. So I think that's just what people miss, is that at the end of the day, knowledge is power. And that's very true for hobbies. The number one thing that'll set you apart outside of capital in this hobby is knowledge. You can give me $1 million and I will do more with it than someone with 100 million who knows nothing about Pokemon, because knowledge is what it's all about. That's what it's all about. You know, you got to have that at the end of the day. And, you know, the last thing to close with here is that short-term versus long-term, this is just the outlook now. You know, when I mentioned earlier, long-term trajectory with WOTC 10, 20, 30 years from now, yeah, that is probably going to be a very nice, you know, long-term outlook way down the road. But the reality is, if you're that person who's holding that bag today, you know, who bought at the peak of 2020, it's going to suck for a while. Like, that's not going to change in the short term. You know, you're the NFT that you bought for that imaginary land in a game that doesn't exist and might never exist, you know, you're stuck with that. You're stuck with that choice. And that's just the reality. And hopefully, you know, for Charizard and things like that, it'll, over time, you'll see some type of recovery, maybe a long time from now, but you got to keep in mind, when you run older rare mints or better, fundamentals versus market condition. A lot of people are always looking for the next Logan Paul, the next Pokemon Go, the next, will this affect the market? Will this affect the market? To me, all that says is they don't understand the fundamentals. They don't understand the market. You know, they're always looking for something else, you know, change the market because they don't know what to do. So hopefully this is a way to figure out, you know, we walked out the closet with WOTC cards. You heard it here first. That's what happened in 2020. WOTC is just walked out the closet. That's what's probably going to happen for the foreseeable future. I don't think it's done. I think you're going to see more of the same for the short term. And, you know, just being very transparent and candid with you, as always, with this no filter, no editing, no sponsorship type videos that I am known for, because I don't know how to edit. So this is what I got. So this is what you get. So there it is, guys. That's my take on why your WOTC investments aren't working anymore. That was like a nice tongue-in-cheek topic to talk about, and, you know, it really encompasses a lot of things that are going on. But as usual, you know the deal. Let me know how you feel. It's pretty much it, guys. Till next time.